Welcome to the deep dive. I'm so incredibly glad you could join us today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Because the stack of intelligence reports we're looking at today is frankly mind-blowing.
Oh, it really is.
We are exploring, invisible threats, bizarre assassination attempts, and just a global risk landscape that has completely shifted under our feet.
Wow.
And we're pulling our material today exclusively from the December 2025 issue of CBRN World magazine.
Right. And for those outside the defense sector, that acronym stands for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives.
It's a publication that offers a truly unique window into a world most people never see, let alone think about on a daily basis.
Which is probably for the best, honestly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But our mission for you today is to take this massive stack of global threat reports and distill them down. We want to understand the incredibly fragile line between natural disasters, accidental hazards, and intentional sabotage. Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through these briefings, you realize very quickly that threats today don't always look like an army marching across a border.
That is precisely the context we need to establish right up front.
Yeah.
In our modern sort of hyper-connected world, the stakes are everywhere, but the vectors of attack have totally changed.
Right.
Sometimes a massive global security threat looks like a sick wild boar wandering through a forest.
Whoa.
Sometimes it looks like a frozen pizza in a suburban kitchen, or a spiked bottle of beer. The landscape of risk has become incredibly localized.
The wild boar is exactly where we need to start.
Yeah.
We are talking about the Great Spanish Boar Mystery. This incident sounds like it was pulled straight from a spy novel.
It really does.
Let's look at the recent African Swine Fever, or ASF, outbreak in Europe. Now, just to be clear for you listening, ASF is a highly contagious, deadly hemorrhagic fever that affects domestic and wild pigs.
Right.
It is entirely harmless to humans.
Completely harmless to us, yeah.
But for the agricultural industry, it is absolutely devastating. Europe has had to cull over 1 million pigs since 2022 just to try and contain various outbreaks.
Which brings us to a highly unusual, highly localized case in Catalonia, Spain.
Spain is a massive player in global pork production.
Huge.
And they hadn't seen an outbreak of ASF in 30 years.
Right.
Then suddenly, 14 infected wild boar carcasses are found dead within a very tight 1-kilometer radius around 2 specific towns.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, and Catalonia is the beating heart of Spain's agricultural sector. For this virus to just spontaneously pop up there with no obvious vector and the nearest known infections hundreds of miles away.
It raised immediate red flags for authorities.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is the DNA forensics.
Oh, this part is wild.
When the Spanish Ministry of Agriculture and the European Veterinary Agency, UVET, started analyzing the tissue samples, the story took a sharp turn. Historically, the local Spanish ASF strains belonged to genetic groups 2 through 28. But this new outbreak, the sequenced virus, belongs to group 296.
Wait, pause for a second. If the local strains only go up to group 28,
Yeah.
how does a 296 just magically appear in the Spanish woods?
It doesn't.
Right.
That variant hasn't been seen outside of a laboratory since a very specific 2007 outbreak in the country of Georgia.
Wow.
Furthermore, researchers found a highly unique change in the virus's genetic code. Specifically, they found a nucleotide change.
Okay.
A G swapped for an A in location 22 of the intergenetic region.
So for those of us who haven't taken a biology class in a while, what does that swap actually mean in the context of this virus?
Think of it like a typo in a very specific, highly complex line of computer code.
Okay.
This exact genetic typo has never been detected in wild populations before.
So it's not natural.
No,
Well-
the only place a virus with that specific mutation exists is in a research facility.
That is terrifying.
Because of this, epidemiologists are classifying the Catalonia incident as a highly suspicious point introduction.
Meaning someone physically brought a lab-grown virus into the woods of Spain's most important agricultural region and released it.
That is the leading theory.
Oh.
And it really highlights how ASF is increasingly being recognized by intelligence analysts as a low-regret weapon for hybrid warfare.
Tell me more about that term, low regret.
Well, because the virus doesn't kill humans, if a state actor uses it to sabotage a rival's economy, the international response is usually muted.
Ah, I see.
You don't get the same front-page outrage or military retaliation that you would if human lives were lost.
Because it's just pigs.
Right. Yet the economic damage to the target nation is catastrophic. It is a terrifyingly deniable method of warfare.
And it's already being used as a geopolitical football.
Definitely.
Poland recently accused Russia of actively participating in agricultural sabotage.
Yes, the Polish incident.
The Polish government claims someone deliberately dumped an infected, partially gutted boar carcass in an isolated area of central Poland, specifically to trigger an ASF outbreak and damage their farming sector.
If we connect this to the listener, why should you care about wild boars in Spain or Poland?
Yeah, it feels far away.
Well, but it's not. Because food security is national security. The global agricultural supply chain is incredibly vast and notoriously difficult to police. Spain is the world's third largest pork producer. A targeted, intentional disruption of their agricultural output doesn't just hurt Spanish farmers.
Right.
It sends shockwaves through the entire global food supply. It affects availability and drives up prices at your local grocery store.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because agriculture is just the tip of the iceberg.
Unfortunately, yes.
We're going to pivot now to a rapid-fire tour of the Global Threat Watch from these December 2025 intelligence briefings. We're moving from the terrifying all the way to the totally absurd.
Let's do it.
Let's look at how industrial hazards are slipping through those exact same supply chains we just talked about.
Yeah, so in the United States, authorities recently intercepted a shipment of radioactive frozen shrimp.
Radioactive frozen shrimp.
Exactly. And when they traced the supply chain backward to find the source of the contamination, it led to the modern Cikande industrial estate in Indonesia.
Okay.
The numbers involved in this incident are staggering.
I had to read the environmental report twice.
Yeah?
The Indonesian Ministry of the Environment found that radiation levels at the site had reached 33,000 microsieverts per hour.
To put that in perspective for you, the recognized safety limit for public radiation exposure is 0.11 microsieverts per hour.
So we are talking about radiation levels that are roughly 875,000 times higher than the safety limit.
Yes.
What does that actually do to a human body?
At that level of acute exposure, you are looking at severe cellular damage.
Wow.
Workers would experience acute radiation sickness, nausea, vomiting, blistering of the skin, and massive long-term spikes in cancer risk due to DNA fragmentation.
And people were working there.
9 workers at that estate were heavily exposed to the cesium-137 isotope, and scores of families in the surrounding area had to be evacuated while special decontamination units were deployed.
That is just awful. Do they know how it happened?
They suspect it might be linked to improperly processed scrap metal imports from the Philippines.
Right.
But the sheer scale of the contamination making its way into a food export facility is alarming.
It's terrifying that industrial waste can just slip into the global food market like that.
It really is.
But what happens when that kind of contamination isn't an accident? Because looking at the report from Gujarat, India, we see exactly how these hazards are being deliberately targeted at local resources.
In Gujarat, the anti-terrorism squad arrested a doctor who was in possession of 4 kilograms of castor bean and mash.
Okay.
He and 2 other men were allegedly plotting to extract ricin with the intent to poison a public drinking water supply.
Ricin is one of those toxins we hear about in movies, but how dangerous is it really?
Incredibly dangerous. It gets inside your cells and prevents them from making the proteins they need to survive.
So it just shuts everything down?
Completely.
Yeah.
It is highly lethal even in microscopic doses, and there is no antidote. What the Gujarat case highlights is how accessible these biological threats have become to lone actors. You don't need a state-sponsored lab to create a mass casualty event if you have a basic understanding of chemistry and access to castor beans.
And while lone actors are a massive concern, the systemic vulnerabilities at the state level are just as alarming.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at the recent security audit released by the state comptroller and ombudsman of Israel, Matnyahu Engelman.
Right.
Despite the intense security posture of the nation, the audit revealed some massive gaps in how they handle CBRN threats.
The report noted that during the Israel-Hamas war, approximately 26,000 missiles, rockets, and drones were launched at Israel.
Right.
Yet, according to the audit, several vital facilities were left unprotected because the necessary defense establishments didn't even have properly mapped out work plans for their physical protection.
The part that really stood out to me was the controller's warning about Israel's system for safeguarding dangerous biological pathogens.
Yeah, that was jarring. He found that the regulatory framework designed to secure these biolabs relies on a document written 16 years ago.
16 years ago.
And worse, it exists solely on paper. It was never actually implemented across the board.
Think about how much the world has changed in 16 years.
Exactly. A security protocol from 2009 doesn't account for modern drone swarms, advanced cyber attacks on facility cooling systems, or the realities of a modern conflict zone.
Yeah.
If a stray rocket hits a research facility, where the power grid goes down for an extended period, how are those pathogens kept secure?
Right.
The controller explicitly warned that without modernized, implemented safeguards, these biological agents could easily slip into hostile hands amidst the chaos of a physical war.
What really stands out reading through this magazine is how these chemical and biological classifications are increasingly blurring into global politics.
Well,
We see this with the recent United States executive order signed by Donald Trump, which officially designates illicit fentanyl and its precursor chemicals as a weapon of mass destruction, or WMD.
which is a highly debated move that showcases this exact blurring of lines.
Right, because opinions are really split on this in the source material.
Exactly. From a pure toxicology standpoint, some experts argue that fentanyl's extreme lethality and mass casualty impact absolutely fit the profile of a WMD. However, other geopolitical observers argue this is strictly a jurisdictional maneuver, a political label designed to expand military and Justice Department funding and operational authority across borders.
Just totally impartially looking at it, you see a very similar dynamic playing out in regional border conflicts elsewhere, too.
Yes, you do.
In the escalating dispute between Cambodia and Thailand, the Cambodian National Defense Ministry recently alleged that Thai aircraft dropped what they described as poisonous water,
Right.
essentially a toxic gas attack on a local village, causing severe respiratory issues for soldiers and police.
And Thailand's military immediately condemned the claim as total disinformation.
Right, they completely denied it. And then in the Middle East, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently had to publicly dismiss reports circulating in Arab media that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad had been poisoned or targeted for poisoning.
Stating the former leader was living in Moscow with no such issues.
Exactly. So whether these specific claims are true or just strategic disinformation, they show how the mere specter of chemical and biological agents dominates modern political anxiety.
It's a powerful narrative tool.
It really is. But honestly, as dark as all this state-level warfare is, the reports on micro-threats and bizarre assassinations almost read like dark comedy.
They really do. The methods people choose when they have access to modern chemistry can be deeply surreal.
Surreal is the perfect word. Take Ecuador. President Daniel Noboa was recently targeted at a public event.
Right.
Someone tried to assassinate him using chocolate and jam.
Chocolate and jam.
Yeah. His security detail intercepted the sweets and found they were laced with 3 highly concentrated toxic substances.
It's wild. And then you have the domestic cases. A man in Germany was recently brought to trial for attempting to murder his wife.
Oh, this one.
7 times.
7 times?
Yes. His weapon of choice. He kept lacing her frozen pizzas with aconitine.
Wait, frozen pizza is like everyday grocery store pizzas?
Yes. He was slipping a highly toxic plant extract into her normal weekday meals.
That is unhinged.
Aconitine comes from the monkshood plant, sometimes called wolfsbane. It's a severe neurotoxin that causes life-threatening heart arrhythmias and paralysis.
The detail in the report that blew my mind was his Google search history.
Oh, yeah.
During the investigation, police found that he had literally searched for detectability of conitine poisoning right before ordering the toxic plants to his workplace.
Which is a remarkably poor operational security decision.
To say the least.
If you are going to attempt an assassination via frozen pizza, using your personal computer to Google if you'll get caught is certainly a choice.
But perhaps the most bizarre assassination claim in the entire December briefing comes from the Russian FSB. There is a note in here from the FSB about a drone and Yorkshire brewed beer. Please tell me I'm reading this right, because this sounds like a bad spy movie.
You are reading it perfectly right. The FSB claimed they broke up a Ukrainian plot to assassinate a high-ranking Russian military officer.
Okay.
According to their report, the officer met a glamorous woman on a dating app. She promised to send him gifts of premium beer.
Of course she did.
The FSB alleges that a drone was going to deliver bottles of Yorkshire-brewed India Ale and Imperial Stout that had been spiked with 2 very specific chemicals.
Right. What were they?
Colchicine and tert-butyl bicyclophosphate. They even arrested a man who supposedly agreed to be the delivery driver for the poisoned drone beer.
Okay, colchicine and tert-butyl bicyclophosphate. What do those actually do? Because putting them in an imperial stout is an absurdly specific detail.
Very specific. Colchicine is actually medication used to treat gout, but in high, unregulated doses, it essentially stops cell division and causes multi-organ failure. Tert-butyl bicyclophosphate is a highly toxic synthetic convulsant. It aggressively attacks the central nervous system and causes violent seizures.
That's horrifying.
It is. And the FSB pointedly described these chemicals as being a British manufacture, weaving the chemical specifics directly into their broader geopolitical narrative against the West.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, while a poisoned frozen pizza or a drone delivering toxic stout might sound completely absurd, they represent a very real shift.
Right.
The tools of lethal chemistry and biology are trickling down from state-run labs to individuals with an internet connection.
Yeah.
But as these reports show, you don't even need malicious intent to create a mass casualty event. Everyday accidental exposures in our local environments are causing massive harm.
This is exactly what the magazine's Spicy and Weird column focuses on. The scale of food hygiene failures and accidental poisonings happening right now is absolutely staggering.
Definitely.
Let's look at Indonesia again. There was a free school meals initiative that went horribly wrong due to widespread contamination.
Right.
We aren't talking about a few kids getting an upset stomach. An NGO reported that 15,000 children were sickened.
15,000.
Yeah. And the structural issue wasn't even fully resolved because another 1,500 cases popped up later in November.
And in Europe, we've seen multiple deadly clusters of botulism.
Botulism is one of those things you hear about with canned goods, right?
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
It's a rare but incredibly dangerous illness caused by a nerve toxin produced by bacteria.
Okay.
These bacteria thrive in low oxygen environments, which is why improperly preserved or stored food is the usual culprit. The toxin attacks the body's nerves, causing muscle paralysis and severe respiratory failure.
It's very serious.
Incredibly. In Italy, 2 people died, and 17 others had to be hospitalized after eating contaminated broccoli and sausage sandwiches from a simple food truck in the Calabria region.
Oh, man.
And it happened again in Sardinia at a Mexican food stand during a festival. 2 more people died from eating contaminated guacamole.
Just from guacamole.
Yeah. And when the Italian police raided the festival and the vendor's headquarters, they found 25,000 pounds worth of ingredients.
Like what?
Things like rice, tomato paste, and flour. All of it being stored completely improperly, creating the perfect anaerobic breeding ground for the botulinum toxin.
It's just awful.
It is not just an international issue either.
Yeah.
In the United States, the CDC and FDA have been investigating a massive botulism outbreak linked to infant formula.
Right, I read about this.
As of the data in these reports, 51 infants across 19 different states had suspected or confirmed infant botulism after being exposed to contaminated batches of By Heart Whole Nutrition baby formula.
It really makes you realize how fragile local safety is. We place so much absolute trust in the systems around us.
Like to.
You trust the food truck on the corner, you trust the baby formula from the supermarket, you trust your municipal water supply.
Exactly.
But look at North Dakota. A man recently went to trial for threatening to dump cyanide into a town's water supply. When deputies searched his farm, they didn't find cyanide, but they did find 20 pounds of highly toxic rodent poison stockpiled.
Or consider the trucks you drive next to on the highway every day.
Oh, this one is scary.
In Oklahoma, a mechanical failure on a tanker truck caused a massive leak of 25,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia right behind a Holiday Inn Express.
Anhydrous ammonia is absolutely terrifying because it's a completely invisible vapor cloud.
Right.
And it aggressively seeks out moisture. So if that vapor hits your eyes, your throat, or your lungs, it reacts with the water in your tissue and turns into a caustic base.
Essentially burning you from the inside out.
Exactly. 34 people had to be rushed to the hospital, and over 500 local residents had to be evacuated to emergency shelters just because a single valve failed on a truck.
Unbelievable.
It makes you ask yourself, how much trust are you placing in the infrastructure around you without even thinking about it?
This raises an important question.
Yeah.
And it is the thread that ties all of these intelligence reports together. Whether we are looking at state-sponsored biological hybrid warfare with wild boars in Spain, a bitter spouse lacing a frozen pizza in Germany, or a tragic mechanical failure at a baby formula factory.
Right.
The threats of tomorrow are largely invisible, highly complex, and intimately tied to our daily routines. The line between a natural outbreak, industrial negligence, and a deliberate weapon of mass destruction is getting blurrier every single day.
And I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. We briefly mentioned earlier that the Israeli security report flagged the rise of artificial intelligence as a compounding factor for these vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Think about the German man who used Google to figure out how to extract a lethal plant toxin. Today, it takes a bit of targeted searching and some basic chemistry knowledge to create a hazard.
Right.
But what happens tomorrow? What happens when anyone, anywhere, can simply ask an advanced, unrestricted AI model to design an entirely new synthetic biological pathogen?
Scary thought.
A virus custom-built to bypass all of our traditional security detectors. How do we protect a society when the step-by-step instructions for mass disruption are instantly accessible in the pocket of every single person on Earth?
That is the ultimate question.
It's a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining us and letting us share what we've learned from this incredible deep dive into the source material. As always, keep questioning the world around you, stay curious, and stay safe.